KLYC AM 1260, and glad you're with us today. And we are going to be looking at the issue of the sheriff's race here in Yamhill County. Sheriff Jack Crabtree kind of surprised everybody here late last week. He sent out an email that we received here at KLYC, and I guess the employees of the sheriff's office did too, as well as other news media outlets, saying that Jack was not going to be running for re-election. And by the way, Jack Crabtree, if you're listening, we'd love to have you come in on a cup of coffee this morning, or any morning, Monday through Friday, that we can schedule you in. We'd love to talk to you about your career. What are you going to do in the future, your future plans? And I'd like to visit with the folks here on the radio station to just see what's going on, and maybe to give us a little insight about, I know you mentioned in the news release why you opted not to, but there was a question about whether term limits applied. Did that have any bearing on the decision? Anyway, it's a kind of have some questions. So an open invitation, Jack, for you to come on a cup of coffee here on KLYC, and we can talk about things a little bit, maybe about law enforcement and some of the challenges you foresee going into the future. Anyway, this morning on Cup of Coffee, we have Tim Casey. And Tim, glad to have you with us here on the program today.
Thank you.
Now, Tim is a deputy, a Forest Patrol deputy for the Yamhill County Sheriff's Office, and is the first person to file for the position. Captain Tim Svensson, did I get that right? Last name?
Svensson or Swenson, I think it goes by both.
Okay. He has announced he has indicated publicly, he has a published report in the News Register that he wants to run for sheriff, but as of yesterday has not yet filed for the position. So we will bring him in as well and talk about that. But Tim, you're the first one out of the gate. You're the first one to file for this position.
Yeah, I was surprised. I didn't know what to expect there. Wasn't sure who was going to put in for it, and so here I am, sitting, the only person to do that so far.
Did Jack's announcement surprise you?
It did. I think we were all kind of expecting him to run again. We know that he has a passion for the job. Obviously, he was there for 12 years, and he was there every day, and he came in and worked with a passion and kept us in the black and did a great job with our budget. And I know that he, I think, truly wanted to run another term. So it was a surprise, yes.
So when you heard that, what was has this been something you've been thinking about, or, what was going through your mind? Whoa, Jack's not going to run for another term. Maybe I'm interested. What's going on in your head?
Well, when I first was hired back in 2006, I had mentioned to Sheriff Crabtree and to Captain Summers, at that time it was Lieutenant Summers, that someday when my opportunity came along that I did want to run for sheriff. When I was in the academy and you introduce yourself to the academy class, that was one of the things that I said that I wanted to do, that someday that I would be a sheriff, and hopefully that it would be in the county that I was born and raised in. And so I knew that I always wanted to do that, and it was just a matter of waiting my term or time, and so now it's come.
Why? Why do you want to be sheriff?
Well, again, like I said, I was born and raised. I was born here in McMinnville. I was raised in Newburgh. My mom and dad grew up here in McMinnville, Fred and Bev Casey. Our whole family has lived here. I grew up picking strawberries for local berry farms and milking cows and working at local stores. And my brother and I did a paper drive one year to raise money, and people supported us and gave us their papers. And we grew up in Newburgh, a small community, and so you learn that bonding. And we grew up, our family grew up as leaders and motivators and positive people. And so for me, it's just something that I didn't want to come into an organization or to a job and just say, well, I'm going to just be here and just get by until my retirement. When you see good things happen in an organization, which I have seen the Sheriff's Office leaps and bounds over the years. Again, like I said, I started working as reserve in '94 in Newburgh, and the Sheriff's Office has made great leaps and bounds. And so now sitting back and watching that, it's like, I want to get in, I want to preserve what we have done to put us in the situation that we're at, and then make sure that it stays there, keep the morale of the employees and the citizens, and keep us working together and keep us on each other's side, and then also make further growth. And that growth will come from my experience of living here all my life, and the things that I have seen and that I want to see happen. I want to see those preserved, and so this is my opportunity to do that. One of the big things is we grew up in these small rural areas, and not a lot of it is there's not a whole lot of financial base, and so one of the big things here too is I want to make sure that we sustain funding for the sheriff's office and keep the citizens of Yamhill County protected with the amount of service that we have. So we're going to give them, we're going to serve Yamhill County, the citizens with high quality law enforcement services, in a fiscal and ethical and fiscally responsible manner. And I want to make sure that we do that. We've done that in the past, and I want to continue doing that. And I think that my leadership will bond the community and the sheriff's office together even stronger throughout the years.
What are the biggest challenges facing law enforcement today? One of the things we'd like to do is just philosophically, I understand you're still working for Jack Crabtree, and he's going to be there till January of 2015, I believe.
Yes.
And so, you kind of have to understand that the guy that you're trying to want his job, you're still working for him as an employee, so we're not trying to undermine that situation and that relationship. But just to get a philosophical idea about where you stand on the issues. What are the biggest issues affecting law enforcement today?
It's funding. Things are getting tight. The money's not there as much, and then the cost of living is going up. But then we're not able to hire more deputies to fill in for the increase of population as well. So primarily, that's all based and comes from the lack of funding. And so that's what I'm saying. We need to get in. I need to get in there and sustain the funding, keep us in the black. The plan is to keep that funding, raise more money, find a way to get more money for the sheriff's office so that we can hire more deputies. In return, in that way, we can increase our patrol divisions, we can increase our detectives, our community response team, and our corrections facility. So that's the biggest challenge right now is having the match of the money and the proper amount of deputies for the population, so that we can balance that out and give everybody the service that they deserve.
What now? Item in the news here: the shooting at the Naval Yard. There's this debate, and I'm surprised somewhat by, well, not really, I guess, but rural law enforcement officers here in Oregon, at least in Deschutes County and the counties that I've been at. There's an alarming increase in the number of these shootings, and why do you think that is? First of all, any idea? I know it's just you and me.
Yeah,
talking,
it's so hard to say. A lot of it, I think that the media, social media, I think at times over publicizes or shows too many images of this stuff on television, and then it almost seems like that it's on for so long a period of time. Somebody out there that has that mentality kind of maybe feeds on that a little bit. Some of it is people coming back from the war with the depression and whatnot. Things, drugs perhaps. But I'm not sure. Obviously, it's the change of times. I guess maybe we could look back at other times and say, why did the people do certain things back in the 60s or the 70s that we don't do as much of today? And I think it's really a convoluted issue. I just don't know the magical answer to that.
I'm just going to throw my opinion
Sure.
on it, but we can't totally relate to on video games. But I think there's been the culture has been desensitized. You see these CSI shows on TV about the bullet entering a body and the blood splattering and so on and so forth. And you got these video games. You got all these movies with all the violence and so on and so forth. And I have to admit, I like a good war movie just like anybody else. But I graduated in 1978 from high school in Idaho. And if somebody had a hunting rifle in the back of their truck when they went to school, no big deal. And now they'd call in the SWAT team. It's just amazing that the change and when I was in school in 78, you didn't dream of taking a gun into a school and shooting people, and now it's a concern. And there's metal detectors at a lot of the inner city schools and even some of the other ones. It's just sad that society has evolved into that.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a great point. The video games, like you said, some of it is like you want to watch a good war movie or a good Western movie where there is shoot 'em up.
Yeah.
But these are just flat out blatant. They shoot at law enforcement or they're shooting back at military and it's blood splatter. And the thing is, these kids have these in their hands 24/7. It's not like you sit down and watch a movie for an hour and a half periodically or occasionally. And so these kids do feed on that. And when they don't have anything else to turn to, they don't fit into a group. And anger builds, or they see something on TV and they figure, well, I have nothing else going for me in life. This is all I'm going to be. I'm going to find a weapon and I'm going to go in and I'm going to take care of a bunch of people that picked on me. Probably when you and I grew up, yeah, a guy came in the parking lot, like you said, with a deer rifle hanging on the rack, but there wasn't necessarily the even thought of going in that we're aware of and shooting somebody up. And now it's well, I see it on TV. I see how they did it. I know what I need to do, and I know that I can get this stuff. And so they go out and they obtain it, and then they carry through. And I think a lot of it is the video game stuff.
I do too. Well, when you have there's a game, I'm going to be specific, Grand Theft Auto, okay? You have games like that where the purpose of the game is either to shoot cops or get away from the cops or come on. Now, I'm getting on my soapbox here a little bit, but I think, we're teaching these young kids to do this, and then something happens in their life, and they pull the trigger, so to speak. It's really sad. So, have to ask this question as far as, there are a number of sheriffs in Oregon and elsewhere across the country that take in a position on this, concealed weapons and the concealed carry issue. A lot of talk about that going on. What's your position on concealed handgun carry?
I was a concealed handgun carrier myself, and I see no issue with that. I think that the people have the right to arm and defend themselves. And most of the time, you will see that anything that you see in the media or on TV, the mass killings or a killing, it isn't a concealed handgun person carrying their handgun. It's somebody that will never be able to probably really even qualify for one or shouldn't. And again, if you're sitting in a position and you're with your family, you're broke down on the side of the road with a flat tire, whatever it might be, and now all of a sudden here comes along some people that want to inflict harm on people, and you are not armed, and something does happen to your family, your wife, your child. I think some people that would think differently about that. And again, it's concealed handgun permits are for the people that they're in the hands of the right people.
Mm-hmm. As we're looking at this particular instance with the shooter in this particular thing at the Naval Yard, there was a pattern of misconduct and there was arrest record, and it seems like I saw somewhere in here that there was not a complete background check that was done, but there was an incident. There was an arrest record in Seattle. He had fired several shots into the tires of a car during an altercation over a construction site where he lived in 2004. Also a weapons incident in Texas in 2010. So there is a history of this man using weapons and acting out. So I don't see why we should be totally surprised. Number one, some unanswered questions I have here is how did they get past security with 3 guns? And why was this guy in the facility in the first place if he had a background where the day after the shooting, we're seeing that he had an arrest record in Seattle where he'd fired several shots into the tires of a car during an altercation near a construction site. There's a history here. This guy shouldn't be given a clearance into a military facility, and this is a person that you wouldn't be given a concealed carry permit to.
That's correct. And he did also have an incident in Texas where he shot a round through the floor into the apartment of another person living in this apartment complex. Apparently this gal had been playing loud music all the time, and he confronted her in the parking lot and told her, you're playing loud music. And so this round goes into her house, and the story is that he said he was cooking and cleaning his gun at the same time, so he had kind of the cleaning oil and solvent and grease on his hands, and it slipped. There was a cleaning kit there. They did drop the charges. Clearly this guy has an issue with not being a guy that should be carrying a firearm. How he got in there, there's speculation. I'm sure we'll all find out. But at this point in time, my guess is that he had to pass, and he got it through a private contractor. This private contractor, we don't know the answer there other than maybe he felt he needed this guy's expertise or his help bad enough that he maybe fidged on the application or the process to get there. I don't know. It seems to be that it's one of the most secured military bases that we have in the United States, and how this happened is just, again, I think it just comes down to somebody's just totally not paying attention, or, yeah, he's a little off, but he's okay. You know, I know the guy, I've known him for a long time. Maybe he shot his way in. Maybe he gained access. I think at one point in time they did say that they were checking all bags and trunks, and apparently on Monday, that was a day that they started to not check trunks of vehicles, so you actually could have got into the parking lot with something in your trunk. So I don't know. Right now there's a lot of question, but that's clearly just something that should not happen.
Yeah. So as the chief law enforcement officer, if you're elected to the sheriff, you know, this is an issue in society today, and boy, I don't know how you protect against it. Personally, I think I'll just share my view on it, and we can talk a little bit. One of the nice things about a cup of coffee is we just share our views. I have an opinion, and I guess I'll share it right now. And if you don't agree with that opinion, you can send me an email. Dave@KLYC.us is the email address. But one of the things, usually, let's take school shootings, for example. They go into a zone where nobody's armed, and it's shooting fish in a barrel. And I personally think that maybe we should allow teachers that want to carry it to carry a firearm, because when they go into a school and they're there to shoot innocent people, and as many as possible and as quickly as possible and as horrific as possible, because that's part of what they want to do. So I think part of the answer is allowing the good guys to have a gun. That's just my opinion. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I feel the same way. You know, you can look at that, and there's always two sides to everything. And, you know, you see some of these teachers in Texas that are carrying firearms, are allowed to. They certainly, if in Connecticut, when that guy went in there, somebody had a firearm, when was able to, he certainly probably could have stopped that threat and saved many, many lives. And so that's always a possibility. And then you also have the possibility of maybe a student overtaking a teacher and then coming up with a firearm that he wouldn't otherwise have been able to obtain getting in there.
True.
So you kind of have, I would tend to lean towards, I think you would have better odds of that not happening than being able to stop somebody that walked into that school and started shooting. So that's a real tough issue, and I think that would have to be dealt with on a case-by-case, school-by-school issue. And that's something that I think even if I had a kid in school and the teacher was carrying a gun, I could still see both sides of the coin. But I think overall I would feel much better if the teacher probably had a firearm. But then again, you have that risk. So it's just I think the people are going to kill, they're going to kill, and they're going to find a way. But every time you can put something out there to put a roadblock or to stumble them or stop them, it can save lives. So somehow or another, somebody there at the naval base just didn't have the opportunity to have a firearm to stop this guy, and that's probably what he knew that.
Mm-hmm. Tragic things happening in society today, and I'm sure we haven't seen the last of these. So let's talk about you, for example, qualifications. Let's talk about your qualifications to be a sheriff. You want to go over your history a little bit as far as your experience in law enforcement?
Well, my experience in law enforcement, I started in June of 1994 until November of 1999. I worked as a reserve at Newburgh Police Department and became sole certified there in a very short period of time. I put in an application in Newburgh in the mid-90s. I was tentatively hired. But then I was also informed that they had a nepotism policy. I have a younger brother that was working there at the time that was, I felt moving along really well, and I didn't want to interfere with that. I was under the advice that maybe I should take the job and one of us might transfer. I just didn't feel comfortable with that. And of course, now Brian is the chief of Newburgh Police. The process of me being there with him could have hindered or slowed that down, and that may not have worked. So, now he is, so I feel really good about that. I came over here in February of 2006 and started working court security for Jack Crabtree, Sheriff Crabtree, and then I did inmate transports. I worked Lafayette code enforcement, and then I was hired full-time in July and went to the academy, and graduated the academy in July of 2006. And since then, I've been a patrol deputy. In 2009, I became our search and rescue coordinator. I've been supervising about 60-plus search and rescue members. I'm in charge of Project Lifesaver. Project Lifesaver is where we put a bracelet on people with dementia, Alzheimer's, and people have the ability to walk away from care facilities or homes, and we can track them. And worked in the Force Patrol, and I'm a traffic crash reconstructionist and also traffic crash fatal crash investigator. And as far as the state requirements, you have to be 21 years of age, not convicted of a crime. You have to have 4 years of full-time law enforcement experience and 2 years of post-high school education, which I exceed that. And let's look back. Sheriff Crabtree was a supervisor just for a few months before he became the sheriff, and I think he's done a tremendous job with the sheriff's office, and he's managed to stay there for 12 years. So there's no real criteria to state that you have to be a corporal, a sergeant, a captain, and moved on through the ranks. Clearly that's not the case, and we've got a guy that has shown that you don't have to be, and you can still do a great job. I owned a business for 16 years. I owned and operated a business for 16 years, and I know what it takes to run that business, to stay in the black, and to deal with your employees and the people that you're hired out to work for.
What kind of business was it? Was it court security?
Well, I worked court security just as a reserve, but the business that I owned was it's called Astro Recovery. We specialize in the recovery of heavy commercial equipment, semi-truck trailers, logging equipment, and over-the-road tractor trailers, and
Astro Recovery, when they were in accidents and you had to recover them, or
they were no, it was a collection agency. We collected debts on heavy commercial equipment, and we worked in the Northwest. Primarily, we worked all of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana. We did a little bit in Alaska and Hawaii, and some down in the southern states, but primarily just here in the Northwest.
How long did you do that?
I owned the company for 16 years, and I worked with a guy that owned the company prior to that as a part-time for about 10 years. He passed away, and his wife sold me the business, and I owned and operated the business for 16 years.
If elected as sheriff, now I understand, with a caveat on this next question is, I understand you're still working with Jack Crabtree. Yeah. You don't want to undermine anything he's doing, and you may not want to say everything you would do at this point, which I'm sure you're making notes right now, but what are you going to be looking at in operating the department?
Well, I do have a comprehensive plan, and one thing about the department right now, it's in really, really good shape. Obviously, everybody's different. Everybody has different ideas, and I have some ideas of what I want to do with the correction side, the patrol side, our community response team, our detectives, and which will better serve. It'll be good for the deputies. I know that they're all going to be really happy with some of the things that I want to do. They're very, very small changes. There's nothing that's going to come in and change anything that Sheriff Crabtree has done or any prior sheriff. I just want to come in and add some additional things. So there really won't be changes. There'll just be some additions because of different ideas. And the fact that I have not been directly involved in the administration as far as the supervisor status has kept me kind of out of that inner circle where I can look back and have a different idea. And again, it's not that I'm going to change anything, come in and say, oh, this sheriff did that and this sheriff in the past did that, I'm going to change that. There's some things, times change in each and every year. Even as I will be the sheriff, I will change things every year against what I previously myself set. So it won't be the changes of some other person. It's just changing of times. We have to stay up with that. And I have some ideas, and it's going to affect our forest patrol as well. And some of the changes obviously are going to support and help sustain our funding.
Now, you're for forest. One of the questions that came to mind, you're a forest patrol deputy. One of the issues that we're having in and again, I'll give you time to think about the answer to this question. One of the issues we're having is some of the Mexican drug cartels coming up and working in some of the rural parts of Oregon because they're so isolated, large expanses, the coverage of the trees, providing good cover. In some parts of the state, especially in southern Oregon, it's a real problem. Do you care to address that? Yeah,
it is a problem. And being the Forest Patrol deputy, I have been involved in some of the stakeouts and whatnot of the drug cartel or possible drug cartel and the marijuana grows here in our county, and the eradication of the plants. There is a problem, particularly more in the southern part of the state now than on our side. I think each year in the last several years, the amount of grows that we are seeing has decreased, and the sizes of the grows has decreased. And it's not very often that you catch them there, because they end up, when they hear you coming in, they get up and run. We did catch a couple of people last year. They were of Hispanic descent, but they were also local. So the other issue is that California, in these states now that are legalizing marijuana through the medical part, some of the drug cartel is saying, well, why send people up into Yamhill County or into Southern Oregon and Douglas County to grow marijuana and the risk of getting caught and losing all of our plants when we can manufacture it, produce it down here and truck it up to Oregon in U-Haul trucks or whatever. So we are seeing less of that. It is a problem, and again, all we can do is keep combating that. That's part of the comprehensive plan that I have also. You know, ideally, I would love, and I know Sheriff Crabtree would too, and I'm sure Sheriff Vasquez prior to him, we'd all love to increase the amount of personnel that we have, the amount of deputies and detectives, but financially we just can't do that. And so if we try to overextend ourselves there, then, you know, we're going to end up into a financial issue. So we're doing what we can. We're just not, fortunately, not seeing as much.
Do you think that's the biggest, your number one challenge is the financial issue of it?
I do.
How do I handle an increasing load? Is crime going up?
Crime's going up.
Okay. So we've got the stressors on society. We've got, you know, the economy still kind of struggling along. People, you know, are making bad decisions sometimes.
Yeah.
And so they're under stress. And obviously, you know, in fact, this shooter that we talked about here just a moment ago, apparently there was an issue about he didn't believe he was getting paid appropriately, or there was some kind of dispute over his salary. So we've got people that, you know, are making bad life choices when life throws them a curve.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that's true. And because they see so much of it on TV, they figure they don't have any other choice in life. Their life basically is over. They feel like it is, or they feel like they're not going to ever gain any ground. So I saw what this guy did. Hey, that was, for their thinking is, hey, that was pretty neat. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. And then that's my way. I don't have to suffer through life anymore. I don't have to try to go find myself a good job or another job. And, you know, people that, I think, again, too, there's this sense of entitlement. You know, you need to work and earn, and then you'll get what you deserve. And I think it's, you know, people walk in and say, oh, gee, you're only paying $8 an hour here at McDonald's or Burger King or whatever it might be. And I didn't mean to single any restaurants. It's just an example. But I think I'm worth $15 an hour. You know, take the job and move on. I picked berries out in the fields for cents, you know, less than $1. You know, we'd pick the carriers and the hallux and all that. But, you know, you did what you could do to survive, and that's what it was at the time. And it's like, you learn. I think people would learn more if they took the job and understood what it meant to be accountable every day, and, you know, come in and say, oh, okay, now I know I work, and by golly, I don't like this $8 an hour. I'm going to do what I can do to get that $15 an hour job or $30 an hour job. We're not having that. We're just having the kid that comes in and says, oh, I'm not going to do that. Go back out, grab the little video game and play games, or the adults that just say, you know, I'm gonna choose to try to collect unemployment, welfare, or food stamps, or whatever it might be. We have too many options and too many outs.
I think it would be good if we had the kids pick berries again.
I do.
When I was a kid, I didn't pick berries because I was on the other side of the state. We didn't have berries over there, but we had a lot of hay bales, and we bucked bales. And one of the things, you worked hard, you sweat, you got hot in the summertime. You made your $50 for bucking, you know, Grandpa's field, and you sweat and you worked, and you weren't there playing video games all the time. And I think sometimes, you know, this is me on my soapbox again, but I really think that we need to make the kids pick berries again. And I know maybe there were some abuses, maybe somebody got hurt or died, but I think sometimes we have a tendency to overreact. And I think in the end result, we're making a little bit too soft on our kids. And I think spending some time in the berry field may not be a bad idea.
No, and you're correct. I'm a conservative. And the reason I'm a conservative is because when I grew up, we did just like you said. You picked berries, wasn't very much money. Then you bucked hay, not very much money. In the fall, you picked filberts, and then in the winter, you clipped holly and you sold it to the neighbors, and you did paper drives. So we understood, and we know what it's like to grow up and not have much money there. So when you don't have very much, and mom and dad aren't saying, oh, by the way, you went out and picked berries, you did all this and that, you don't have very much, here's $50, go buy yourself a pair of baggy pants. You know, the kids now, I think a lot of them do have that option. And again, too, you know, the jobs are now being filled by the Hispanic population. They're coming up, they're taking the jobs because we're not getting other people out there to do it. And but I think it was a great learning curve for me in my life. I know what it's like to be on the downside of economics and income and whatnot. But it makes me appreciative of life and work a lot harder in everything I do. And that's what I want to you know, project here at the sheriff's office as well. You know, let's buckle down. This is what we have. We need to deal with it. We need to work with it, and this is the best it's going to be. So let's make the best of what we have.
Two last questions, and we'll
Sure.
leave it with this. So how do people contact you if they want to visit with you? Maybe they want to see your position. Do you have a Facebook page, website?
We are creating one. Like, again, this kind of, as you mentioned earlier, this all kind of happened really
Sure.
fast. I wasn't really sure exactly what was going to happen.
This may be your first public speaking on this.
It is.
Okay.
I did briefly talk with Natalie at the news register over the phone. We were going to get together yesterday, and she had some appointments and whatnot. So
Sure.
it is, and
So there'll be an article coming in the paper, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, yeah, this is the first public encounter that I've had. Like I said, Natalie was going to do an article yesterday, or talk to me yesterday, but she had some meetings and whatnot, so we did not get together.
What's the takeaway from this? What do you want people, when they see your name and they look at you on the ballot running for sheriff, what do you want them to think of when they see the name Tim Casey?
Well, I want them to know that they're going to have a conservative sheriff. I want them to know that they're going to have a sheriff that's going to be on the people's side, and he's also going to be on his deputy side. And I'm going to back everybody at every possible time and opportunity that I can. I'm a local person. I was born and raised here in McMinnville, or in Newburgh. I was born in McMinnville, raised in Newburgh. All of my family's here, except for the exception of a brother that lives out of town. My brother Chris is now going to be coaching football at George Fox, and my brother's the chief of police in Newburgh, and my wife works in Newburgh. My daughter works in Newburgh. So we're homegrown, and you know, we want to be transparent, humble, modest, conservative people that I'd like to have, you know, the opportunity to make sure that people know that they as citizens of Yamhill County are going to get the protection and the services that they deserve. And then from there, I'm going to make sure that, you know, we keep our budget in the black. We do what we can to stay functioning that way, and then what we can do to increase that if at all possible.
Well, Tim, thank you for coming on the show. There was short notice. We called you yesterday and said, would you come in? And you were Johnny on the spot. You said, sure, I'll come in the morning and we'll talk about it. So I really appreciate you coming in on short notice.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to hear this interview again, it'll be on our website shortly, OregonPulse.com. We'll be rotating with some other interviews. And you can hear the show in its entirety one more time. That's Tim Casey, is currently the Forest Patrol Deputy.
Yes.
And some other jobs also with the Yamhill County Sheriff's Office, oversees search and rescue and the Lifesaver program, and Project Lifesaver. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your day. Good luck on the race.
And thank you.
What election do we vote on?
It'll be the 2014 ballot. It'll be in November 2014. There'll be a primary coming up in the spring of 2014. The last day to turn in your applications for a sheriff will be March 11th, and after that, they'll start preparing for the primary. And then there'll be a primary, and then from the primary, if needed, there'll be a general election in November.
You think we're going to have a very active race for sheriff? A lot of candidates?
I don't know. I don't know. I guess, it's some people talk and say they're going to go out and run, and some don't. So I guess you just don't know. I haven't seen anybody else officially apply for it, and so I'm just uncertain at this time.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Yep.
Tim, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
KLYC, this is McMinnville, Newburgh, and again, you can hear this show here shortly on OregonPulse.com.